Welcome to WCNC Plus. I'm Colin Mayfield inside the Impact Studio. Tonight's headlines are developing minute by minute. In fact, we have a fireside chat with Chief Justice John Roberts of the United States Supreme Court, of course, in Buffalo, celebrating the 125th anniversary of the United States District Court for the Western District of New York. This is along with U.S. District Judge Lawrence Villarado. So let's listen to what they're discussing right now in this fireside chat.
CISIS is an important part of our work. The law is supposed to be predictable, so you need a special justification before you want to overrule a case, other than that you just happen to think it's wrong.
We were talking about the Barnett case a little while ago, and that was a case that overruled a decision that Justice Frankfurter made just a few years before.
Gobitis or Gobitis, whatever.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's been around for a long time.
Yeah. So when you do that, you have to. The first thing has to be that it's clearly wrong. The second thing has to be, does that make a difference? I mean, if, for example, you say, or you can't figure out what the filing deadline is, you know, is it 10 days under the rule or is it 12 days? You have to decide it. But you shouldn't come back and say, oh, it should have been 12 days, not 10 days, so we're going to overrule that. I mean, that's something that most cases, many cases, it's more important that they be decided than that they be decided right. Mm-hmm. Whether it's 10 or 12 days is a case like that. So it has to be a case where it really makes an important ongoing difference and be significant enough to the legal system that it's justified to overturn the approach. But it's not something you want to do very often.
Can you talk a little bit about your experience clerking for Judge Friendly and Justice Rehnquist?
Yeah, 2 wonderful years in my life and 2 totally different experiences. And I have to say, at a very personal level, the chance to clerk with Judge Friendly was very important. I graduated from law school in 1979, and this may be just the way I looked at it, but maybe it was because I, being a kind of lawyer was a second choice for me in general. But the law was a very cynical enterprise back then, I think. And in some ways it's good and others bad. It was very instrumental. People were using law as kind of a vehicle to achieve a particular objective. There's nothing wrong with that at all. That's a lot of people, do that. But also in a cynical way. And law was not regarded as something of sort of moral value, for want of another word. And so I felt, frankly, that maybe this had not been a good choice. This wasn't something that was uplifting. If you had a particular agenda you wanted to pursue, good, it could help you do that. But then I went and, was at the elbow of this extraordinarily great man, one of the most remarkable judges, and he saw it differently. He really looked at it as a valuable gift that we had inherited for ordering society in a reasonable way. And he was somebody who was totally apolitical. The most brilliant judge of his generation. Richard Nixon didn't appoint him to the Supreme Court because he thought he would be soft on crime. And he would have been, from Nixon's perspective. He would have applied the law as it should be, and it meant some criminals were going to go free and others weren't. And he was able to sort of construct, certainly in his opinions, which lawyers here know were remarkable, realized that this was a system that had internal coherence and that was really a gift, and it needed people who are willing to view it in those terms rather than this is how I'm going to use it to get to a particular result. So that was where kind of I left my cynicism about the work that we as lawyers and judges do, and appreciated that it had a greater worth. And just in terms of writing, he was a remarkable, gifted writer. He would come off of the bench after argument and sit down with a legal pad, 2 of them, one for text, one for footnotes or notes, and just start writing and finish it in 1 day or 2 days. And the secretary would type it up and give it to one of his law clerks, and we'd look at it and say, well, what does he want us to do? And he would have some ideas and look at it. So that was a really remarkable year. And then with Rehnquist, Rehnquist was the generation between. Judge Friendly was kind of like almost like two generations. He was older, and I was just out of law school, and Rehnquist was kind of right in the middle. A different approach. His writing is crystal clear, very direct, and had the same sort of appreciation and, I don't mean to overuse these sorts of words, but reverence for what the law does, but was very, direct and analytic, and you sort of knew exactly how it was structured and where it was going. So it was a nice experience for me to have two very different people, and they really admired each other. In fact, I got the clerkship with Rehnquist because he and Friendly were at a conference together. And I think, Justice Rehnquist asked Judge Friendly if he had any good law clerks, and he mentioned one, and I guess somebody else hired that one, and then he mentioned anyway, I don't mean to be long-winded about it, but you do kind of look back at that and see these sort of formative influences in your life, and are grateful for them.
Does the way you deal with your clerks, by and large, mirror the way they dealt with you?
No, I wouldn't say that. When you're in the middle of it, it's kind of hard to be self-conscious and appreciate. I mean, I don't.
We may have lost this shot with Chief Justice John Roberts, who's speaking with another U.S. District Judge on the 125th anniversary of the Western District New York Court. They're celebrating, again, the 125th anniversary of the work that's been done there inside the court at the U.S. District level. We are awaiting a press conference down in Dallas, or close to Dallas. The Van Zandt County Sheriff's Office is searching for a man tonight on this Monday night who is, just gathering some information here from NBC DFW. They're saying that this guy has a murder charge in Kaufman County, has removed his ankle monitor. So there's a manhunt ongoing. So Texas leaders say they're searching for 32-year-old Trevor McEwen. He was supposed to appear in court for a trial for a murder that happened in May of 2023. So you will see potentially some family members of the victim in this case here. It says within hours of a disappearance, multiple agencies could be seen from the Texas Sky Ranger searching the area of U.S. Highway 80, which is east of Grand Saline. So it seems like they were searching a property belonging to this man's family. Did not turn up anything. And it looks like the sister of the victim, the Martinez family, seems to be awaiting in this shot, potentially. They're waiting to speak very soon. Aaron Martinez is the victim of this, who allegedly was killed by this man who they are now searching for. So the county is offering a $10,000 reward for information that leads to his arrest. This is a serious situation, and it is developing as we are talking about this right now. So they've confirmed that this man is armed, but they're urging residents not to attempt to apprehend him and report any other sightings to police. So as we await this press conference, we'll continue to get information, and then once it happens, we'll go live to this. But we do have a developing situation that's happening right now that we know of, that there's apparently a protest happening on Columbia University's campus that potentially could have been violent. We're seeing some messages and some reports, and this is why the police presence you're seeing from this shot here that they gathered at Columbia University. It seems like parents, they're urging Columbia University protesters to reach out to the people that are on the university's campus right now. This happened just after 6:20 p.m. There's a large group of apparently pro-Palestinian protesters that entered the library's reading room at that time. School leaders saying that the protest is limited to a main room and not the rest of the campus's main library. So this is what this police activity is right now. So some interesting stuff going on. Columbia's public safety team, they're asking people in the library for identification and to disperse at this time, saying that protesters have failed to comply and will face violations of campus rules and possible arrests, which is why you can see police now have made it to the scene. It seems like the campus said no one is involved in the protest has agreed to leave, although they have chanting could be heard outside the library pretty loudly. So that is the shot that we're seeing right now outside of Columbia University. This situation unfolding and police trying to get everything, and potentially could be some protesters there entering or exiting this building as we are looking at this. So it seemed like it was an isolated incident to one room in the library on Columbia University. And again, not going to assume that these are protesters here, but these individuals are leaving this building on Columbia University's campus, which is where this protest was happening. So we'll go back to the fireside chat with Chief Justice John Roberts and U.S. District Judge Lawrence Villarado.
It was a wonderful experience kind of being a judge but not having the buck stop with you. So the pressure's not there, but the wonderful part of the job is. And that makes clerking, I think, a really unique experience. So let's get to our time is running out. Let's get to the heart of what I want to talk to you about. There's a lot of Buffalo Bills fans here today.
Yeah, listen.
And when the playoffs come around, there's a lot of calls that go against us. Are you going to be around to handle some emergency appeals this season? You know, we're getting tired of the same old thing happening to us year after year.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Well, I was here long enough. I know I had a poster in my room of Jack Kemp, quarterback, and I think Darryl LaMonica was there too. Yep. And Pete Gogolak, who was the first soccer-style kicker. Even Cookie Gilchrist, if I'm remembering that. So that was what was posted on my wall. But I left when I was 10, and we moved to a town in Indiana. Chicago was the closest place. So
you're a Bears fan?
I'm a Bears fan. But look, when I was growing up, it was Dick Butkus, Mike Ditka, and really, if he hadn't blown out his knee, the greatest running back in NFL history, which is Gale Sayers. And we were near, they had different connections with, they would come and talk at the grade school even. And we were in Indiana on the lake, and people liked to go there. And it was just...
Yeah, I say Gale Sayers, I think, was the most beautiful runner I've ever seen. He just was so graceful. And so much fun to watch, and it was a shame that he blew out his knee.
Yeah, I have a signed helmet of his, not of his, it's a Bears helmet that he signed in my chambers.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. This is an honor for me, and this was a very pleasurable hour. So,
well, not at all. Thank you for having me, giving me the opportunity to go back and see my boyhood home and kindle memories of Buffalo. I appreciate it.
We're proud that
Thank you all for being here.
Proud that you're from here.
Thanks, Ted. Great. Thank you.
All right, things are wrapping up with Chief Justice John Roberts there in Buffalo, New York, this fireside chat. Many things were discussed, of course, including, as you heard, the Buffalo Bills and football as well. So we are also watching a situation at Columbia University that seems to be dying down. Protesters apparently were on Columbia University's campus inside the library, but things seem to be calming there, but we'll keep an eye on that. We are also watching that press conference, awaiting that press conference by that victim's family. There's a search for a suspect ongoing who was supposed to be on an ankle monitor near Dallas, Texas. So we're watching our news partners down there to see when that begins. We will take that as well. But Very interesting revelations coming forth today from Cincinnati City Council on corruption, all stemming from a situation between Tark Bukhari and the chief of police, Johnny Jennings. At one point, a very interesting discussion was had earlier today, and our Nate Morabito discussed more about that. We have that on WCNC.com if you'd like to go there. But we'll listen into this press conference as they discussed this entire situation.
This is always a difficult thing that you have to do that really kind of just strains you in the way that we should behave and act and perform. But I could not let it go with the allegations made by Councilmember Watlington against this organization. They are serious, and they damage the reputation of this organization. To be clear, these allegations are unfounded. And if she has any proof, she needs to provide that to the city attorney's office, who is duty-bound to investigate. You know, we have a legal and ethical obligation in this community and this organization to follow the law. And part of my job as mayor is to lead with the facts. Not everyone may agree with that. But I tell all of us that stand here today took the oath of office. And that oath of office means a lot to this community. If I have something to say, usually I say it. I may not be the nicest way to say it, but I try my very best to put my name on it and provide facts for this community. I've lived in Charlotte since I was in college. I spent most of my adult life working for this organization that I serve. And I want you to know that I would never embarrass or harm what I consider to be the greatest city in this country. I want to address Chief Jennings. As I've said before and often, I believe Chief Jennings to be the best police chief in this country. He has dedicated more than 30 years of his life to serving this community, and he's led what I believe with dignity, honesty, and integrity. The chief was publicly attacked by a former council member who stated his intent was to damage his reputation and end his career. I owe the chief an apology for not publicly supporting him then. I also support the men and women of CMPD who put their lives on the line every day. They too have taken an oath to uphold the law and protect our community. This council has worked with and will continue to support the men and women who protect this community. Now, we have a number of the council members behind us tonight, but I want to also recognize that Council Member James Mitchell and Council Member LaWanna Mayfield could not be here today because of illness. But I've spoken with them, and they want to share this statement on their behalf. Their statement is, we stand with our colleagues, and we share their commitment to work with respect and honesty. And so I know that this is something that we all want to have end in a way that everyone can be agreeable, but sometimes it just doesn't work that way. So right now, what I believe is that we're going to have a review by the council members, but first I've asked the city attorney, Anthony Fox, to address what he can at this time, and then we will follow up with Malcolm Graham, Council Member Malcolm Graham. So with that, Mr. Fox.
Thank you, Mayor. North Carolina law is pretty specific in terms of the authority that it gives the city council to deal with matters. One of the specific laws deals with the ability to respect personnel privacy. When this council deals with personnel of the council or of the city, it is obligated to comply with the personnel privacy statute that maintains the confidentiality of the information that is contained within an individual's personnel file. The other body of law that's important is the ability to go into closed session because the General Assembly has deemed it important enough to confer upon cities the ability to go into closed session for particular purposes. The law also provides that when you go into closed session, that information is confidential. It's not to be shared, and it actually imposes criminal sanctions against any individual that's found to have violated that law. Now, with regards to the matter that many of you have read about in the media and in the papers, that is a matter that was conducted in closed session. Our counsel has been instructed by me, and consistent with North Carolina law, not to speak about that matter, and they cannot. The other thing that controls the behavior of this council in the city is the code of ethics that this council has adopted. This council has adopted a code of ethics that requires them to conduct themselves in accordance to certain standards. That code of ethics also allows for complaints to be filed for violations. If there are allegations of violations, that code of ethics provides that those allegations can be brought to the city attorney, and then I have an obligation to investigate those violations. I have not received anything to date with regards to the information that's out there in the media requesting that investigation, but we certainly will conduct one if those are brought to my attention. Thank you.
Mr. Graham.
Good afternoon. I have an enormous amount of respect for all of my colleagues that I serve with, and had the opportunity this morning on 2 occasions to speak with Councilmember Wallington. In fact, we spoke several times last week about a wide variety of city issues, many of which I agree with her on. But words matters. I've been serving as long as she has on the second tenure here on City Council for 5.5 years. A total of 20 years, including my first tenure and 10 years in the North Carolina State Senate. So I've seen a lot. Words like unethical, immoral, illegal activities, disregard for dissenting opinions and the rule of law, they matter a lot. They echo outside of the building. They echo to potential corporations are looking to call Charlotte home, to those that we want to retain, to economic development activities, etc. Words matter. It also matters that when we go in closed door session, that we keep those conversations confidential. It is why we are here today. This is not the first time that we've had a leakage from our executive session on matters that are important. They impact the ability for the city council and the manager office to have a relationship that works, that's built on trust and transparency. Leakage matters. I also called for the mayor and the manager, if appropriate, to begin an investigation on the leak itself. I think that's really, really important because we have to remain and build trust internally in the building as well as externally in the building. It also matters how we process our work. It also matters when we disclose, what we disclose, and to the extent we can disclose. It also matters how we treat one another around the dais. It also matters how we talk about our city. Our governance in this community is strong. Our management system in this community is strong. The council members that you see standing behind me are committed to the work in an open and transparent way. I've cast thousands of votes here in Charlotte as well as in Raleigh. Sometimes I'm in the majority, sometimes I'm in the minority position. And I treat each and every vote the same because there's always another. And so the dissenting opinion, we have debates, Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, but every opinion, every thought is heard. And then there's a vote. And then we move on. This is a great community, a great government staff, council members who are working full-time for part-time pay, and committed to doing the work. And do we get it right all the time? No. Are we able to correct our behavior? Yes. Are we committed to doing the work? Absolutely yes. And doing it in a way that is transparent, that is open, that is ethical, and honest. Many of the leaks, and to the media in front of me, are half-truths about a wide variety of issues, and because we cannot disclose, they go unanswered. We will do better. We will stand by this administration, this management team, and continue to do the work for the city of Charlotte. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dante Anderson. I am the Mayor Pro Tem and a representative of District 1 for the City of Charlotte. It is unfortunate that we stand before you today under the dark shade of allegations of immoral and criminal activities from a member of this body, this board of directors, for over 5.5 years. Charlotte is the 14th largest city in these United States, operating under a well-managed government with a multi-billion-dollar balanced budget. Our airport is the sixth busiest, with one of the highest credit ratings possible. Our municipal and enterprise entities are regarded as gold standard among peer cities and others large and small. We should all be proud of the city government that is responsible for Charlotte, the Queen City's operations. Everyone, every entity has an opportunity and room to get better, to enhance, to be more efficient, to do better. Charlotte is no different. Please be assured that the operations and the management of our city is of gold standard. In addition, I'd like to take the time to thank the Chief of Police, the Deputy Chiefs, the Majors, and all officers of CMPD for their dedication to the safety and the lawfulness of the Queen City. Our chief stepped up when there was a void of leadership. Those with a discerned understanding of leadership lean into those moments clear-eyed of the gravity of that role. The chief did so and saw us through a number of tenuous situations throughout the years. I want to commend the chief's leadership and express my gratitude for his dedication to the city of Charlotte.
So, not to belabor a point, I am Marjorie Molina, and I represent District 5, which is East Charlotte. Not to belabor a point, and I got notes, but I can tell you exactly what I need to say. First off, I am absolutely proud of the city that we live in, the one that we call home, And as many of my colleagues here have stated today, we have a lot to be thankful for. This news conference is overshadowing what we should be celebrating as a balanced budget that will not raise our taxes, with the highest credit rating. Again, according to who you ask and when you measure, we're the 14th or 15th largest city in the United States of America. We have the 6th busiest airport, and we have nearly 1 million humans that call Charlotte home. And words matter. How we talk about our home, how we conduct business in our home, and how we administer decisions in our home. Every person, whether you work for the city of Charlotte or you work for a private institution, has a right to privacy when it comes to work matters. And it is for that reason this conversation was held in closed session. It was not to withhold any particular information from the public. It was to respect the privacy of an employee of the city of Charlotte. I can't overstate where we were nearly 1 year ago today. We experienced one of the worst tragedies, the worst tragedy in our city's history, where 4 law enforcement officers were killed in East Charlotte, and 4 additional members of our team was wounded. And to be the leader of an institution at that time at such a high level of impact, I can't imagine what that must have been like for our chief. I remember joining them with many of my colleagues that are standing right here today, where most of our officers were in tears. Just a week ago, the Charlotte climb for Tunnel to Towers, we witnessed the widows of officers that will never see their husbands again tell us in a plea, thank our chief, they thanked our officers, they thanked our public safety officials, and they praised the city that we call home. And it is so unfortunate that just 1 year later, we're in this place right now. I still own the same level of honor and respect for every last one of the human beings that provide public safety service to our city and our region, whether that be our fire, whether that be our police or our medic, or any human that decides to step up to keep us safe. And I think many of us have to be the same way, because it's an institutional portion of what keeps Charlotte the city that she is. I would be remiss if I didn't say that the statements released by my colleague were not extremely strong in nature. I have not spoken to her to get her sentiment or understand what her rationale was. And as the attorney mentioned, if there is something that she feels that would be in order for investigation, she has a right to come forward and make that known, so that if it's warranted, an investigation can take place, and she should. But I implore the community members, not only in East Charlotte, but in our city, to know that the ones of us, all of us that stand here, we hold this honor of representing the city in very high regard. It is an absolute honor to sit here and be elected by the people that call Charlotte home and have the honor to make those decisions. And I know that we do that with integrity and with the highest honor for what we are doing and administering decisions for the fiduciary responsibility and anything else thereof. So thank you for your time today, and I think my colleague, Ms. Asmira, will be speaking now. No, you go ahead.
I'm Dimple Ajmera, Charlotte City Councilwoman at large. I did not prepare remarks for this, but I'm going to speak from my heart. I did have an opportunity to speak with my colleague, Councilwoman Victoria Watlington. I'm here today to not attack my colleague or point fingers, but I'm here today to send a crystal clear message, because this is the right thing to do, that I stand here with the City of Charlotte and our residents. Let me assure you, there is no illegal activity or corruption going on in our city. And as the chair of the Budget, Governance, and Intergovernmental Relations Committee, that is something I take it very seriously. Obviously, there are processes that we can improve on, and I have had that conversation with some of my colleagues, including Councilwoman Watlington. But we can do that by working collaboratively, without silencing anyone's voice, while working with the city attorney, the city manager's office, to ensure there is greater transparency and accountability. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ed Driggs, and I serve District 7 on Charlotte City Council. Mayor Lyles, thank you on this occasion and all occasions for your even-handed leadership. We appreciate you. It saddens me for Charlotte that a member of council would use scaremongering tactics like this to draw attention to herself. I'm not aware of any foundation for Councilmember Watlington's allegations, and it is important to note that they are not supported by any specific assertions of fact in respect of which she could be held responsible. These are wild allegations. It's not even clear what they mean, but they are offered in such a way that she doesn't have to defend them. It should be noted that Charlotte City government has robust controls in place in the form of internal and external audits, as well as close scrutiny by the rating agencies that award Charlotte's debt, the highest debt rating available, AAA, based in large part on how well the city is managed. The budget process spearheaded by Manager Jones has won national awards, and of particular note, CMPD, under Chief Jennings' leadership, announced a significant decrease in crime in the city in the latest reporting period. Charlotte owes Chief Jennings a debt of gratitude for his long years of dedicated service. We are now at an important juncture in our city's history, with major initiatives underway in the areas of mobility, housing, the environment, equity, and on many other fronts that will make Charlotte a great place to live for decades to come. When I visit other cities, I always come home grateful for the many advantages we have here. There are always things we could do better, but we should never lose sight of the fact that we as a community, all of us who live here, should be proud of Charlotte. Thank you.
Thank all of you for being present here today, because this was a tough time for us to actually review and look at what our colleague, Victoria Watlington, meant by power corrupts, meant by illegal activities, meant by the level of unethical, immoral, and frankly illegal. And that's a tough thing when we have an organization like this that works so hard to improve the life for every citizen in our purview. So with this, I think that you've seen from the council members the concern that comes when we're not sure of what direction we're taking. But I commend to our public, to all of our citizens, to all of the people that work here, and that we will be people and as a council that will make sure that we pay attention to our employees and that they come first, that we achieve the goals that we set when we ask them to do this very difficult work, and that we, as a committee, as a group, as a board, however you call it, that we will work in harmony together. We'll get through this. It won't be easy, but I'm sure it can be done. Thank you very much. Now, the next statement I have is that if you would like to have an interview with any one of the council members,
Still monitoring those live developments of protests at Columbia, pro-Palestinian people there rallying and protesting on Columbia University's campus inside the main library. So that situation is ongoing. We'll keep that in the box as we continue to monitor that situation. However, former First Lady Jill Biden is moderating a conversation with an author about her new book, and it's all about based in San Francisco in 1866, about an Irish nun abandoned following a terrible relationship with a Chilean aristocrat. So a very interesting book that the former First Lady is discussing right now with this author. So we're listening in because it seems like there's a lot going on, and it seems to be pretty jovial. So we'll go to it now.
Did your sentiment to write what should not be forgotten inspire Amelia's resolve? Remember how she kept all those journals?
She starts very young writing dime novels. She loves to write.
Yes.
Most of you have never heard of dime novels, but dime novels was the literature of a time when people were almost illiterate, and men would buy them, not women. And these were little novels, not more than 90 pages, that were sold in kiosks and everywhere. And they were always about cowboys and bandits and things like that, very male stuff, and very basic. Yeah, very basic. And so she starts writing that, and then she wants to be a journalist, but she can't with her own, as a woman,
That's right.
she couldn't do it. So she has a pseudonym. And finally, she is able to go to Chile to cover the war. Now, let me tell you how, when I try to explain how I put together a book, it's always with questions. I have a war, and I don't want to take sides on the war. I want a neutral voice, a neutral narrator. So I will bring the narrator from somewhere else. I say, from where? From the United States. Which part of the United States? California, because I know California and I don't know anything about the red states. And so... And then the question is, okay, who is this person? And one question after the other. Why would a woman be sent to cover a war in the end of the world? Mm-hmm. Well, she needs to speak Spanish. So I need to give her a stepfather that is Mexican. And then I say, well, what else? She needs to have roots there of some kind, some connection to the country. Okay, so she's the illegitimate child of a Chilean aristocrat that impregnates a nun. Now,
I know, wait till you read it.
Now, why a nun? I thought it was fun. Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff that just happens when you're writing a book. You don't plan it. The nun just popped up.
I'm sure they'd be happy to hear that in Rome now. Okay. So I hope this next question makes sense because you haven't read the book, but though there are many heavy moments throughout the novel, Amelia's cleverness and wit lend themselves to humorous moments too. For example, when she's traveling from California to Chile, she's on an American battleship that she sneaks on, and she's the only woman aboard, and she passes the time playing cards with the officers. So what was it like writing scenes where, such as this one, where Amelia is so clearly underestimated and ends up proving others wrong?
It's very easy because that has been my life. To be underestimated because I'm a woman and because I'm short. So, yeah. So I have had to prove...
There are only short people clapping.
Yeah, only the short people. Yeah. But you know what? My stepfather instilled in me the idea that everybody was more afraid than me and that I was the most intelligent person in the room. And she said,
Wow.
no, you go ahead and do it. And I think that's what Emilia does. That's what the stepfather tells her. There's nothing that you cannot do.
Okay, as the highest selling Spanish language author in the world,
Thank you. Now, Jill, who decides that? Who knows that? It's what, huh? Viva Chile!
okay, so this sort of follows on that. So you, with 80 million copies of your books in print, you've probably proven a few people wrong too. When have you felt underestimated? Well, you sort of just answered that all the time, right?
Look, when I sent my manuscript to an agent in Spain, the first manuscript, The House of the Spirits, this Catalan woman who was the biggest agent in the industry at the time told me, I like your book, we will have it published. That doesn't make you a writer. A writer is proven with the second book and the ones that follow. And I'm going to tell you that being a woman means that you will have to do double or 3 times the effort of any man to get half.
All right, we're going to go back to the situation where there's an ongoing manhunt in this search for this murder suspect. The victim's family is speaking right now. We're going to listen into this as this is ongoing.
Been no response, no formal response or public response from the sheriff, and there has been no response from the district attorney. There's been no press conferences, there's been no meetings with the family, there's been no communication between the sheriff and Aaron Martinez's mother and father, and he basically gives a reason that he doesn't need to give them any information, that he's giving information to other family members. The original bond was $2 million. That was reduced to $500,000. He posted bond on the $500,000, and then that was revoked when he started posting on Facebook the photos of Aaron, and they raised it to $2 million, and then he posted that bond. The name of the bond company is called Southern Bonds, and Southern Bonds posted the first bond and posted the second bond after the first bond company refused to bond because there was no collateral on the bond put by the grandmother. The grandmother then, on a second bond, refused to pay that bond, and Southern Bonds then posted the bond without any collateral, without any financial wherewithal to guarantee a $2 million bond. And so these are some of the questions that we're asking, you know, the Kaufman County, is how does Kaufman County District Attorney allow an unsecured bond of $2 million? How does the sheriff allow a ankle monitor to be the only form of guarantee that he would be appearing in court? And 3, what are the future liabilities of the bond company under Section 23(1) of the Texas Penal Code, where it says bonds, if you look it up, we're asking the Kaufman County to demand that the bond company pay for the cost of the investigation and the manhunt for Trevor McEwen, because that's the only way that we feel that there will be continuity. We don't believe that at this point in time, Kaufman County is spending the necessary resources to do a diligent search for Trevor McEwen. They did the Van Zandt, but as far as we know, there's been no additional massive hunts for him. There's been no posting on a national web page. There's been no communication from the FBI. There's been no communication from the U.S. Marshal. There's no communication from the Texas Ranger. No one has made a public statement regarding the fugitive nature of Trevor McEwen. If this were anyone else, there would be FBI, there would be Texas Rangers, there would be state police, there would be Kaufman County sheriffs, there would be, U.S. Marshals, and so far no one has made any statement regarding the arrest or the investigation towards the arrest of Trevor McEwen. Nosotros estamos indignados que el sheriff hoy tuve una conversación muy agresiva con él, donde él nos dice que no tiene ninguna necesidad para reunirse con la familia de Aarón Martínez, el papá y la mamá, aunque ellos son los que trajeron a este.
So this is the Van Zandt County Sheriff's Office where this man is at, and they're looking for a suspect who is charged with murder in Kaufman County. He has removed his ankle monitor and was due in court earlier today. It's 32-year-old Trevor McEwen, supposed to be in court for trial for a murder that happened back in May of 2023, Aaron Martinez's murder. So it says that he removed his ankle monitor at 5:33 this morning, left his residence, but it's unknown. He did flee on foot. Or they believe it could have been in a vehicle as well, but they have no description of what this man was wearing, and they have no idea where he could be. So they're asking multiple agencies to help in this. He was seen in an area near a highway earlier today, or that's where they were thinking he was, and they were searching, but have not found this man or anybody they were looking for. They did search a property as well, believed to be connected to McEwen, who is the suspect in this, but nothing has been turned up. So now the family is speaking out and calling for justice for their family member, which is what you're hearing now. So we're going to go back to this as they continue to speak.
Muchas gracias por estar aquí y por escucharnos. Y pues realmente no hay mucho que decir en este caso porque pues estamos ajenos a lo que ellos nos dicen. O sea, no nos dicen más bien nada y estamos indignados porque nos fallaron en el sistema, nos fallaron en la justicia. Desde que empezó el juicio de Aarón, cuando no bajaban el bond o había muchas cosas a favor y otras en contra, siempre estuvimos en las cortes presentes y se nos hace injusto que a última hora el asesino.
All right, we have some developing news right now in this shot at Columbia University. We'll leave this press conference right now. We seem to see people leaving in handcuffs or at least some type of zip ties being arrested. There was a discussion or at least a protest being staged in Columbia University's Butler Library Wednesday afternoon. Apparently, New York City Mayor Eric Adams calling this unacceptable. Saying that he wants to say to the parents that if your children is on the Columbia campus participating in this, that you think, or he thinks that those parents should reach out to them. Apparently there was, well, I have not seen any violence, but there was potentially a call from police that there could be some violence happening on Columbia University, but there's no reports that I've seen. Looking on NBC4's page right now, but this happened around 4 p.m. There was a large group of pro-Palestinian protesters who entered the library's reading room. School leaders saying the protest is limited to that main room and not the rest of the campus, but clearly they were doing something to break the law here, which is why they have been detained and moved, it looks like, off the library's property right now. So they're asking people in the library for identification. They've been making sure the campus was safe to lock down this as well. It looks like it was an isolated incident, but no one involved in the protest has agreed to leave, which is why police were called. And it seems like things have led now to the detainment of multiple individuals. I'm not exactly sure how many people were taken into custody here, but saw at least 5, 6, 7 individuals come out of that, as you can see that door, that those men are coming from NYPD police. So we're getting more information on this to see what might have caused this, especially for the arrests to come through. This was breaking news, NBC4. They were protesting inside the Butler Library. So campus members, there are asking everyone to avoid the area near Butler Library at this time as this incident goes on. So we do have something ongoing as well. It looks like Secretary Rubio is going to be honored at the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Lifetime Leadership Award in D.C. here. Could be a dinner that Secretary will be, of course, brought on and honored on stage here. So we'll go to this as this is happening in real time right now in Washington, D.C.
His resilience, his adaptability that have really made and symbolize and characterize his career. He understands that American leadership remains indispensable in this world, not as an imposition, but as an invitation to build a world that reflects our shared values of freedom, democracy, and human dignity. So again, please join us in presenting the Chile Lifetime Leadership Award to, yes, one who is an amazing public servant, but as those of us that have had the privilege, the honor of knowing and working with him, a model public servant, our Secretary of State, the Secretary of State, Secretary Marco Rubio.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I didn't know I was speaking. I'm shy in front of audiences, so I apologize. I don't like to speak that much, but first of all, thank you for those kind words. I'll have more to say about that in a moment. I'm, of course, also happy that my wife, Jeanette, is here. This Lifetime Achievement Award or Lifetime Leadership Award is a little scary because it's like, that's it, you're over, it's done. Usually they give it to you at the end, but because you don't know what I'm going to do the next 3 years. Maybe you want the award back in a couple of years if things don't work out. I hope not. I hope not. But thank you. It's an honor to be with you. It's also an honor to be Señor Presidente de la República Dominicana. Muchas gracias. También vas a recibir un premio esta noche. But more importantly, I'm glad the President of the Dominican Republic is here so he can go back and say, well, they really like Marco Rubio back in the United States, at least in this room for this time. But thank you. It's an honor to be with you again. And, I was reflecting just for a moment as before I came here today. And this whole, a couple points. It's a tremendous honor to serve as a Secretary of State. And when I joined the administration early on, they said, one of the initiatives that we're pursuing is to increase efficiency in government. In essence, they want to be able to do more while, spending less or putting less. And for example, they said, one of the things we want you to look at is consolidation. Can you take, for example, what today are 4 jobs and just give them all to one person? And I said, that sounds like a great idea. We just do that all across the government. Little did I know they just meant me. But it is an honor to be here tonight on behalf of the National Archives to speak to all of you. And it's actually a really cool job. So anyways. I think back, and though there's still more work to do, at sort of the road that brings me to this point, and even watching that short, brief video a moment ago about Lincoln reminded me of things. So maybe it'll make sense to you at the end. I want to share the story with you. I always had an interest in politics and global affairs, and people say, well, what is this interest you've always had in foreign policy and in international relations? And I'm like, you've obviously never been to Miami, and where, foreign policy is domestic policy on a daily basis. But I always had an interest in public. So, listen, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I had some master plan where I was going to start at the City Commission in West Miami and 20 or 30 years later wind up as Secretary of State. But I always had an interest in it. So when I was a college student, as Congresswoman Rosalina Ziliana just pointed out a moment ago,
let's go back to this press conference with Aaron Martinez's family as they make a plea to the community.
They have not received a call from the district attorney's office. They have not received a call from the Sheriff Beavers. So, they have not received any kind of information from the FBI, from U.S. Marshals, from Texas Rangers, from district attorney, from the sheriff. Nobody has contacted them as if they don't exist. Nadie se ha comunicado con usted.
No, nadie.
How could it be that the mother of Aaron Martinez does not have any information? That's the concern that they have. Why hasn't the sheriff reached out to them? Why hasn't the Kaufman County District Attorney reached out to to Salvador Martinez and his mom? Why are they afraid to show face to the family? It's not that simple. If it were your son, you'd want an explanation. You'd want to meet with the district attorney. You would want to meet with the sheriff. You'd want to know what the U.S. Marshals are doing. You would want to know what the FBI was investigating. But they have done none of that. There have been no communication whatsoever relating the search for Trevor McEwen. And so it's unconscionable, unacceptable that a capital murder individual, someone charged with capital murder, is able to rip his ankle bracelet and there's no explanation. That's just unconscionable. I've never heard in all my life as an activist and working in the courts, I've never seen anyone post a bond of $2 million for capital murder. Nobody. This is the first time, and it happened in Kaufman County, and they are saying absolutely nothing. Ubaldo Martinez, su hermano. Tú hablas inglés, ¿verdad?
No, casi no, poco. Buenas tardes.
Bájate para que puedas hablar al micrófono.
Buenas tardes todos. Gracias por venir aquí a cubrir estos acontecimientos que están pasando y gracias por su apoyo. Y pues la verdad lo que les voy a decir nos deja un poquito consternados.
All right, we're going to go back to Secretary Rubio as he's getting a Lifetime Achievement Award right now. Let's listen in as this continues.
To renew my passport. Sounds like a simple thing unless your cruise is on Saturday and you don't have a passport. A lot of immigration things. I remember they were helping people find employment. Again, and I was only there a few months. And I learned so much from that experience, and it really impacted me. When I came back home in the summer of 1990, by the way, there's an interesting story. My wife at that time was my girlfriend. I had just met her, so I must June, July that year. You don't even know the story. One of the first, you remember this? One of the first times I asked her, she went with me as a volunteer. I was a volunteer on a Saturday at a fundraiser. I'm just saying that, I'm sure the statute of limitations run out and whatever. But I wasn't a paid staffer. And as a volunteer at one of her, I actually even remember the fundraiser. I think it was the second anniversary of your 39th birthday. That's what they called it. Yeah. The second anniversary of her 39th birthday, or maybe the first anniversary of her 39th birthday. And my wife, my girlfriend at the time, sat in one of the, remember this? You had to do the name tags. In fact, I even remember, I think the guest was Olga Guillot. Do you remember that fundraiser? It was incredible. This was back in 1991. Okay, so I go back to college. I come back in the summer of 1992. And I said, you know what would be really cool is to work on a campaign. And so I drove to Hialeah, to this strip mall. There's Hialeah people everywhere. They're everywhere. Huh? Even at the Waldorf Astoria, there's people from Hialeah. It's unbelievable. There was this storefront in Hialeah, and I remember the thing I remember about it. It was in the shopping area where there was a place called Chico's. Remember Chico's? And on the other side of Chico's, don't tell me there's nobody here that went to Chico's, right? There was. All right. They're making it up. They didn't went to Chico's. And on the other side of that, in the top floor, was a campaign for a state senator named Lincoln Diaz-Balart. He was running for Congress. And I volunteered. I walked in. I met this young lady, Anna Carbonell. And I volunteered on that campaign, which he ultimately won. It was an interesting campaign. I remember he had a debate against Javier Soto, a great man. Remember this debate? And so this was a great campaign. And we got hit by a hurricane that year, right? Or shortly thereafter, and it impacted the elections and what have you. But nonetheless, so I worked this campaign. He gets elected to Congress. I go back to school. I graduated in 1993. And I decided I want to go to law school. I'm about to tell you a story which is true. This is not, I'm not making this up. I mean, it sounds like it's fake, but it's not fake. And if it is, you can't prove it's fake anyway. But I'm going to tell you because it's true. I go to drop off my admissions, like my application, personally to the University of Miami. And my 2 letters of recommendation to the law school were Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen and now Congressman Lincoln Diaz-Balart. So now you're thinking you did have a master plan. That's why you went to 2 places. But it really wasn't. It was 2 people I knew. I dropped it off. And when I get home, I get a phone call, and I had been admitted to the University of Miami Law School. Now, maybe the letters had something to do with it. I hope they did. In any event, I go to law school, and this begins in 1993, and time moves on. We interacted many times over those years in different capacities. I was just a law student. I got elected to the West Miami City Commission, and then I get elected to the Florida Legislature, where I'm serving for a number of years. 2 years before I became Speaker, in 2004 to 2006, I got to serve in the Florida Legislature, and there was a state senator who was serving in the state Senate. I think he was one of the first people to do this, but he decided now that term limits had removed him from the state Senate, he was going to run for the state House. And I thought, that's very peculiar, like you're a state senator, and now you're going to go back over to the state House. As it turns out, he was appointed the chairman of the redistricting committee to draw congressional districts, and then I figured it out, because that's why Mario Diaz-Balart came back to the state House to draw districts. And but I had a chance. We sat next to each other on the floor, and he was a huge influence on me. People say, what is the most important thing you learned from Mario Diaz-Balart? And you know the story I'm about to... Scared. So here's the story. The Speaker, they always relied on him to carry some of the big bills in addition to his work gerrymandering his district. And I'm kidding. Is there media here? It was the old district. It's not the one now. I'm just saying. All right. And so in 2006, so they would come with him with all these bills, and they, you know, you carried a bunch of bills, civil service reform. Now, I don't mean this as an insult. This is going to be a compliment. You have to let me finish the story, okay? Okay, you have to let me finish the story. But Mario knew nothing about these bills. He knew nothing about the details of the actual legislation. What he knew, remember you, but here's where the compliment is. They would, you know, you stand up on the floor of the legislature and they would say, Representative Diaz-Balart, you're recognized to present your bill. And he would stand up and say, this bill is about civil service reform. Everybody knows what this is. It's time to vote. And so, you know, some poor Democrat, usually, you know, opposition party would stand up and say, you know, the time for questions. Questions of the sponsor. And somebody would stand up and say, I have a question of the sponsor. And they would ask a question, and Mario would say, this bill has been public for weeks. This bill has been known to this whole body for weeks. It is an insult that I would be asked questions about this bill. We need to vote and move on and stop, you know, standing in the way of the people's business. And I said, that is a talented guy. And so I've used that ever since, and it's worked really well in my career. How dare you ask about this treaty? It's none of your business. Vote on the treaty and let's move on. So, in any event, but Mario was also a great friend. And I would actually say that my chances of running for Speaker would have been gravely diminished had it not been for his advice and his counsel. And obviously moving on from there to the time here. I never got to serve with Lincoln while he was in the House and I was in the Senate. Obviously Mario's still here. And now we work very closely together because he happens to be the guy who does the appropriations for the foreign relations. And so, but we've worked very closely for many years. In fact, we worked very closely in the first Trump administration in what ultimately was known as the President's Executive Order on Cuba, which is a pretty dramatic reset that I think will be looked back at. And Ileana was here for some period of time while we were overlapped a little bit. But I will say this. Now, I don't have to do these flights anymore, but I will say this. She seems to fly here as often now as she did when you were in the Congress. So my only guess is that this probably just pays a lot better, whichever you're doing now. It's just a much more, but she's here all the time. But she's a force of nature, and the work she does. And And then, and obviously, you know, with Lincoln's passing earlier this year, it was a beautiful funeral. And you learn things about him that I didn't even know. Is Daniel here? Daniel Diaz-Balart, they told me about. You did a great job. You really did a great job speaking and talking. There were a lot of things about him that I didn't even really know. I mean, I knew, but I didn't know some of the depths of some of it. An incredible statesman, and someone we really all kind of looked up to as someone who made a real difference in some of the bills that he passed, that we look back at now and not fully, you know, it's interesting. Again, I don't mean this as an insult to anyone who's involved in politics today. I almost wonder if you could achieve today what he achieved during his time in Congress, and I'm going to explain to you why. Because he was a guy of action. I mean, he was here because he wanted to make policy. And I think today we've entered a political culture where sometimes what's rewarded is the celebrity. Can you post some provocative thing online? Can you get a 5-second clip that gets replayed on social media of you screaming at a witness? And he did some of that, especially but he just worked and passed legislation. I mean, meaningful legislation. So did Ileana. These are important things that changed the lives of thousands of people. And, you know, that's just not rewarded today in politics the way it once was. And so I hope we don't lose that, but it's hard to emulate the career he had. But here's the point I tried to make in all of this. An organization like this that's interested in leadership, there is someone probably interning now, or volunteering on a campaign now, or sitting next to you now, or perhaps working alongside you now in some capacity, who, through your opportunities that you've given them, you're opening doors for them that will lead to something in the future, maybe in business and maybe in politics. I can tell you with certainty that I don't believe that I could have had not just the success, but the opportunities I have had it not been for the fact that I had an opportunity to intern or an opportunity to volunteer on a campaign. And by the way, the people you meet, do you know how many of the people I met working in those offices or working on that campaign or even working in the Florida legislature that to this day I interact with? Some are still in government or some are not. And I do think as much as anything else, when you talk about Chile, what you're talking about is the empowerment of young people who have a desire to in some way contribute to public service. And certainly when you expose people to these things, when you expose them to the network of other people that they meet, because relationships are everything in life and most certainly in politics, when you allow them to expand their horizons so they can see what the opportunities are and maybe even discover new areas of passion or interest that they never knew about, these are truly seeds that over time bear fruit. And so it's great to stand here. As I said, it's always flattering to receive an award and be recognized. You were Speaker, you were a member of the Senate, you were the chairman of this, you're now Secretary of State, and the National Security Advisor, and the acting archivist, and the acting USAID director. So it's always great to, and the Surgeon General. No, I'm kidding, I'm not that. Nah. I wanted it. You get a uniform. Do you know you get a uniform if you're a Surgeon General? I wanted it, but they had given it away. You know what would be good is Library of Congress. That would be a good job. Acting librarian Mario Diaz-Balart. Do you want it? But all kidding aside, you can talk about this path someone took there, but I can just tell you these things were all made possible because Ileana Ros-Lehtinen and Lincoln Diaz-Balart and Mario Diaz-Balart, indirectly or directly, whether they realized it at the time or not, contributed to it, invested, created opportunities, and allowed someone to explore more opportunities down the road. And that doesn't escape me. And I take great pride even now when I run into someone who interned for me when I started in the Senate, or who now is doing great things, or someone who was a staff member of mine who's now doing great things. And usually, you know, staff members that work for you, when they go do better things, one of two things, you can tell right away. Their clothes is a lot better because they're no longer work for you and they're making just like 5 times as much money. Or they're in charge of something. Some even maybe got elected to things or what have you. I actually take pride in that, and I think that's an incredible thing. But I don't think that's the part. I don't know if people fully appreciate the doors that were opened for people like me and so many others. Not because of those that, I don't want to say those that came before us, but who were in those positions before us. And I also want you to understand this about it, because I think this is very powerful and true. One of the things that allowed me as a young person to believe that it was possible for me to have these aspirations was because there were people sort of kind of came from the same background I did who were already in those positions. Because that was, 20 years before that, 15 years before, that wasn't the case. But when you're a 23, 24-year-old young person growing up in Miami who aspires to one day serve in higher office, and you see someone who comes from your community and the same background that you came from, who now is in those positions, you know what it triggers in your brain? I could do it too. If someone like me could be doing it now, I can do that in the future. And I think that's a very powerful thing that all of us have an obligation to continue to pass on. So I appreciate this award. I'm honored by it. But I would say the opportunities I've had in leadership, as much as anything else, have been the result of what others empowered me to do, gave me the opportunity to do, whether they knew they were doing it at the time or not. And one of them was Lincoln Diaz-Balart, and two of them were Ileana Ros-Lehtinen and Mario Diaz-Balart. And I thank you for what you do every single year through this organization to empower more young people so that the next Archivist of the United States of America may be sitting in this audience right now. Thank you and God bless. Thank you.
We forgot to give him the award.
All right, we're getting a better view of this situation on Columbia University as the sun has gone down over New York City, seeing obviously a lot of NYPD officers still out in this shot. Earlier, the mayor calling this unacceptable. It was a protest, demonstrators staging this protest at Columbia University's Butler Library. I do believe in some respects, they're reporting here by NBC4 New York, a large group of pro-Palestinian protesters entering the library's reading room. They were asked to leave. Many of them did not leave, so that's why police were called. We did have a shot about 10 to 20 minutes ago where we saw numerous individuals taken not necessarily by handcuff, but with some type of zip ties. So we don't know if that means they're going to a certain police station or if they were just in police custody to be spoken to. But there has been really no other developments come from this in the last couple of minutes. Campus members did ask people to avoid the area of the library. They're still doing that. So this is the Butler Library shot here on Columbia University's campus. So numerous individuals, like I said, taken away in zip ties because of this, and it looks like things are dispersing, but more to come from this. If we learn developing news from NBC4 or any other stations there in New York, we'll pass along any of those new developments. A big day today as the president and an ambassador from China, they discussed some things ahead of the high-stakes talks they're going to have in Switzerland. Of course, this is all about the 145% tariffs that are at play on certain imports and exports that come from China. So this U.S. ambassador to China was just sworn in, and that was ahead of these first talks that will be coming in the next week or so. So the U.S. and China have been engaged in this trade war in some respects since early April. And it's obviously injected widespread uncertainty for the U.S. economy for many small business owners and really for just many everyday Americans. So a very interesting development on this front. Let's listen in as this happened a little bit earlier inside Washington or inside the White House.
Thank you very much. Before we begin, I'm pleased to announce that I've just signed a proclamation officially designating tomorrow, May 8th, as a Victory Day for World War II, commemorating the 80th anniversary of America's victory in the Second World War. All over the globe, our World War II allies are celebrating this week, but the United States has never joined in with the proper celebration of our own, and the victory was mostly accomplished because of us. Whether you like it or not, we came into that war and we won that war, and we had a lot of help from a lot of great people, a lot of great allies. But I think there would be nobody that would say that we were not the dominant force in that war, and we don't celebrate it. And I think that's a great disservice to the people that lost their lives and people that fought so hard in winning World War II, and also a separate Victory Day for World War I, and we're going to be doing that too. It was American tanks and ships and trucks and airplanes and service members that vanquished the enemy 80 years ago this week. Without America, the liberation would never have happened. And so we have to pay tribute and homage to those people that gave us victory. And we did something else that people don't talk about. We rebuilt the world. All of these countries that were destroyed, we helped them rebuild. And that's something that, for the most part, others did not do. So with this proclamation, we are hereby honoring the incredible sacrifice and heroism of millions of Americans who served in World War II, along with the unprecedented mobilization, home front that helped deliver this great triumph. All Americans should take pride in what these incredible patriots have achieved. So I just want to say happy Victory Day to all. So we are celebrating every year now. I can guarantee for 4 years, but I think after that we're going to have 2 Victory Days, World War I and World War II. This is World War II Victory Day. In the future, we're going to have a major celebration of each day. We're not going to have days off because we don't have enough days in the year. We have too many celebrations already. But we're going to have Victory Day and for World War I, World War II. And without us, those wars would not have been won. I think we can say that, would not have been won. And I think it's time that the United States starts taking credit for their achievements. And I really believe it's a shame. You know, I was watching for the last week, and I noticed France, I noticed other countries all getting ready for Victory Day. And I said, that's sort of strange, because David just added something. He said, we also rebuilt the world. And I didn't have that, and I should have that. That was a big factor. But I noticed all of the countries, Russia, having a big day tomorrow. And by the way, they lost millions of people. And they were absolutely a major factor. But there was no major factor like us. We won the war, and we won it with the help of others. But everybody was celebrating but the United States of America. And I said, you know, I think it's time that we start celebrating victory. And that's what we're doing. So now for the reason that we're here, but I asked David, would it be appropriate if I did that? He said, absolutely. That's a big thing that we're doing on your swearing in, very big thing. But now for the real reason, and a reason that I'm very proud of because he's been my friend for a long time. We're swearing in our next ambassador to the People's Republic of China. What timing, David, what timing? Only you could have picked this timing. It's your fault. I picked him a long time ago, but it just happened to come due on a pretty important date. But our friend David Perdue, Senator David Perdue, joining David this afternoon are his incredible wife Bonnie, been at his side for a long time, their sons David and Blake, their daughter-in-law Danielle and daughter-in-law Charlotte, and their grandsons David, Hudson, and Jack. That's a beautiful family. Congratulations. I didn't think you had it in you, David. That's really something. That's pretty amazing. Look at that. Our new ambassador brings to this position a lifetime of experience at the highest levels of business and politics, and he is at the highest level. Over 4 decades in business, he rose to lead several major American corporations, including as the president and CEO of the footwear giant Reebok, where he did very well, he did a great job, and later CEO of Dollar General. Likewise, he did a great job. David also lived and worked in Singapore and Hong Kong for several years, developing a wealth of experience negotiating and doing tremendous business deals for lots of different leaders that he worked with. Following his tremendous business success as an executive, David stepped forward to serve America in government, and as we all know, in 2014, he was elected United States Senate in Georgia, and he was very popular, very respected from day one. He served on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and was a tremendous partner to our administration during my first term. I dealt with him a lot, and he solved a lot of problems. Now I'm entrusting David to help manage one of America's most complex and consequential foreign relationships, and I know he'll do a fantastic job. As our lead diplomat in Beijing, David will work to promote American interests and stability in the Indo-Pacific, help stop the flood of Chinese fentanyl across our borders, which we have to do. We lost, I believe, 300,000 people last year. Seek fairness and reciprocity for the American worker, ensure the safety of our citizens overseas, and promote peace in the region and in the world. And I'm confident that he will do an exceptional job. He's an exceptional man, and make our country very proud and make our country very safe, too. So, David, I want to congratulate you. This is as big as it gets, and the timing is unbelievable, but it's time that we have somebody like this. This is a very, very extraordinary man, and you're going to do a fantastic job. And say hello to President Xi when you're over there, please, okay? Thank you very much. Marco, would you do the service? Thank you.
Put your left hand and raise your right. Raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, David Perdue,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the same,
to the same,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well
and that I will well
and faithfully discharge
and faithfully discharge
the duties of the
the
office
duties of the office
on which I am about to enter.
in which I'm about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Mayor.
David, would you like to say something?
Mr. President, I'm humbled to be in this office today. I love what you've done with this office. I like the Declaration of Independence. I want the world to know that I know this man personally. He loves this country, and I am glad to be your man in China. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I think just for the sake of formality, here we go, David. Come on up. Come on up here, Bonnie. That's what it's all about, right? And now we send you on your way. Lots of luck.
Yes, sir.
We're right behind you, David.
Look forward to seeing you over there, sir.
Okay, have a good time.
God bless
Thank you. Congratulations, everybody. Congratulations. Any questions, please?
Mr. President, the Treasury Secretary just told lawmakers that a tariff exemption for certain baby items like car seats is under consideration. Will you exempt some products that families rely on?
I don't know. I'll think about it. I don't know. I really don't. I want to make it nice and simple. I'm not looking to have so many exemptions that nobody knows what's doing. We have to make it very simple, but I'll take a look at it. Yep.
Mr. President, there are rumblings in Washington that some House Republican moderates are opposed to defunding Planned Parenthood in this year's reconciliation package. What do you say to those members, and are you supportive of?
Well, I don't know yet. I have to see, because you're just telling me that for the first time. We'll work something out.
Mr. President, what are you hoping that your representatives will get out of the talks in Switzerland on China? And secondly, what does China need to do on fentanyl specifically? What do you want to see them do?
Well, they have to stop fentanyl from coming in. That'll be a very big part. And I had that understanding with President Xi before I left last time, and we had a deal, and he would have honored the deal. But when Biden came in, of course, nothing ever happened with him. He didn't know what the hell he was doing. But that would have saved a lot of lives. That election cost us a lot of lives and a lot of heartache. The fact that we went through 4 years of misery, and you look at what's coming through the border, and the job of getting murderers out of our country. So many bad things happened. The wars. You wouldn't have October 7th. You wouldn't have Russia fighting with Ukraine. You wouldn't have had that disaster in Afghanistan. You wouldn't have had inflation. All these things would have not taken place. So sad to see what happened. Any other questions?
Are your administration sending migrants to Libya?
I don't know. You'll have to ask Homeland Security, please.
Would you support sending writers? Would you support sending writers?
Said Russia was asking for too much to end the war. Given that, do you still have confidence that...
When did he say that?
Earlier this morning.
Well, it's possible that he's right. He may know some things that, because I've been dealing with this and some other things, but we are getting to a point where some decisions are going to have to be made. I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy about it. Okay.
Just to follow up, sir, on the talks in Switzerland, what do you expect? What do you hope to come out of them?
We'll see. I mean, look, it's we were losing $1 trillion a year. Now we're not losing anything. You know, that's the way I look at it. We were losing with China on trade $1 trillion a year, more actually, 1.1. But let's say $1 trillion. You know what we're losing now? Nothing. That's not bad.
Are you planning a new ceasefire and hostage deal proposal for Israel and Hamas before you head over to the region next week?
Where? Where?
In Gaza.
In Gaza. Well, we're going to see what's happening. There's a lot of talk going on about Gaza right now. You know that, right? So you'll be knowing probably in the next 24 hours.
Are you taking diplomatic actions between the war in India and Pakistan? What's your position?
Oh, it's so terrible. My position is I get along with both. I know both very well, and I want to see them work it out. I want to see them stop. And hopefully they can stop now. They've gone tit for tat, so hopefully they can stop now. But I know both. We get along with both countries very well, good relationships with both, and I want to see it stop. And if I can do anything to help, I will be there.
Mr. President, China says
By the way, unrelated, but I guess it's all related when you look at the world nowadays. Rwanda and the Congo, we've made a lot of progress in getting that disaster stopped. We've had a very talented person over there, and we've made a lot of progress with Rwanda and Congo fighting a very violent war, by the way.
China says in order to have substantive negotiations, you have to bring down your 145% tariffs. Are you open to pulling back your tariffs in order to get China to the negotiating table?
No.
Mr. President, Senator Tillis has come out against Ed Martin as U.S. Attorney. Do you have any response to that?
Well, it's disappointing because, you know, I know Eddie's very talented. Crime is down in Washington, D.C. Street crime, violent crime by 25%. And that's people have seen, they've noticed a big difference. So I didn't know that. But if anybody voted against him, I feel very badly about it, only in the sense that in this short period of time that he's been there, crime is down 25% in Washington, D.C. But that's really up to the senators. If they feel that way, they have to vote the way they vote. They have to follow their heart, and they have to follow their mind.
Mr. President, referring to the Persian Gulf as the Arabian Gulf, are you going to make that announcement on your trip?
They're going to ask me about that when I get there, and I'll have to make a decision.
So you haven't made a decision
I
yet?
don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't know if feelings are going to be hurt. Why have a case right over here? It's called Gulf of America. And I guess a lot of people get ideas from us. But the Gulf of America was something I thought should have been named a long time ago. I'm going to be given a briefing on that. It was just done. And I'll make a decision.
Is it the U.S. position that Iran can have an enrichment program as long as it doesn't reach a weapons?
We haven't made that decision yet. We will, but we haven't made that decision yet.
President,
Yeah.
China said the U.S. initiated the trade talks this weekend and that its position hasn't changed. Are you still confident you can reach a deal with China?
They said we initiated? Well, I think they ought to go back and study their files. Okay? I do think that. Go ahead. What would you?
Are you planning to ease chip export restrictions to some of these Gulf countries and then also make announcements regarding...
We might be doing that, yeah.
And their nuclear programs, civilian nuclear programs?
And it'll be announced soon.
And you're to help them develop nuclear power?
Well, we're going to take a look. We're going to take a look. But, we had really a very good, as you know, we had a very good outcome with the Houthis, and we honor their word. I mean, they made a commitment, and we dealt with other countries that were close to them and their surrogates, and we honor all of their words. We'll see what happens, but I think, I believe that hopefully that's over with, and they'll leave the ships alone, just leave those ships alone. But so we do. We take their word for it. It was, we hit them very hard. They had a great capacity to withstand punishment. They took tremendous punishment. you know, you could say there's a lot of bravery there. It was amazing what they took. But we honor their commitment and their word. They gave us their word that they wouldn't be shooting ships anymore, and we honor that. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to congratulate David Perdue and his family. He's going to be really an incredible ambassador to China. I have no doubt about it. And we're going to work together very closely. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you,
David.
Right out, everybody. Thanks, everybody.
We have some breaking news live on Impact News here. Police investigating after 3 students were stabbed in Santa Ana. So this is the scene right now. Cordoned off, you can see the police tape, and we're taking an aerial view as this is an ongoing situation. So this was a call around 3:30 p.m. local time. So this happened at 3:30 local time in California. Near the area of Martin R. Henninger Elementary School and Santa Ana High School. Police are there, and they're saying that 1 student was critically injured. There were 2 others described to be in stable condition. So this is ongoing. Details are unclear about what led to the violence right now, but the Santa Ana Unified School District said in a statement that they sent to parents that police are leading the investigation right now, and that there is no threat to the public at this time. So this stabbing, it happened after school during activities, which were canceled briefly on Wednesday. Crisis counselors will be available on hand on Thursday to support students and staff needed in this incident. But police believe that high school students were involved in the violence. So they do have a specification in terms of where their investigation is beginning. They did not say, though, on any arrests if they've been made or a connection to the incident just yet. So we're learning this in real time. This just happened in Santa Ana, California, near 2 different schools, an elementary school and then Santa Ana High School, which is another huge school as well. So Santa Ana Unified School District putting out a statement to parents that police are leading this investigation, but that there is no threat to the public at this time. We're going to go back to the situation as it is happening in Columbia, or at Columbia University. There have been a group of pro-Palestinian protesters, a very large group. We have not seen really any pictures other than a number of individuals being taken into custody with some sort of like zip ties on their wrists. We're not exactly sure where they were taken, lost that shot, but they were taken out of the frame. And then just about 2 minutes ago, as we were listening into the president speaking, there were, I would say, 20 to 30 different officers, Jeb, not in full riot gear, but they had the riot shielding on their heads for the helmet. And they were in rows of 2, kind of going towards the library. So it would indicate to me that there is still an ongoing situation there with folks still inside the campus library, which I do believe is called, excuse me one second, Butler Library on Columbia's campus. So they were saying that this wasn't taking place in the entirety of the library itself, but in one room, apparently, and they had asked these protesters to leave. Many of them did not, and so that's what we were seeing was protesters being taken into custody with those zip ties on their wrists. But we're waiting for some more clarification in terms of what's going on at this moment. As I said, 20 to 30, possibly even 40 different officers piled back into that library with some sort of headgear on. So clearly this is a developing situation that is very actionable at this time. So we'll continue to monitor that as we have been throughout these last 2 hours. Coming up on just about 20 minutes left here on our stream. We do know that the vice president is back in Munich on his first international trip. Of course, he's speaking about a number of things, but this speech was about the 61st annual Munich Security Conference. And that happened on February, and this is the second conclusion of this, that the vice president is coming back. And it seems like he is taking a more aggressive approach to try and make a stance on where the U.S. might be. He also did speak on the Russia-Ukraine war and where that is as well. So we'll listen to what he had to say earlier today.
You have to be proverbial basket economically. And what the president has said is we must rebalance the global economy vis-a-vis China. We cannot absorb hundreds of billions of dollars, close to $1 trillion per year in annual surplus, most of it coming from the People's Republic of China. And what that's going to mean in the rebalancing is that we think that the PRC is going to have to, frankly, let their own population consume a little bit more. They've held consumption levels down in order to increase these massive exports. It means that American manufacturers are going to have to be treated more fairly in some of these global trade deals. It means we're going to have to cut some new trade deals with some of our friends in Europe, but also with some of our more adversarial nations. But that also, you know, we have to be careful here, because while we want to rebalance global trade, and that has certainly been the explicit goal of our policy, we also want to make sure that we do this in the right way. And yes, you've seen media reports that the Chinese reached out to the United States. Of course, we're going to sit down and talk to them. I'm not going to divulge too many details or prejudge the negotiations, but we want to rebalance trade in the interests of American workers, in the interests of American manufacturers. That is our policy. We think that we can do that while preserving at least an open dialogue with the PRC and with a lot of other nations all over the world. But that doesn't mean the old way of doing business is going to be stable or that it's going to persist. It simply cannot. It was not sustainable 10 years ago. It was certainly not sustainable 4 years ago, and we're very, very committed to changing it. But we're open to having conversations with both, again, our friends and more adversarial nations about what that rebalancing ultimately looks like. And people have to remember, you know, Liberation Day, which was where the president announced this fundamental change, I think, in the global trading system, that was almost exactly 30 days ago. So we are in the early innings of a very significant shift. I think that shift is going to really inure to the benefit of both the United States, but also of Europe. But it's fundamentally, it has to happen, and it's going to happen under President Trump's leadership.
All right. I think it's great if there are beginning discussions between you and the Chinese. Could you expand a little more on what would your expectations be for an EU-US successful discussion of these trade issues? Is there any message that we can take home to our friends in Brussels? Because that's also, from our point of view, obviously a very urgent issue.
Yeah, so to put it very simply, and we've obviously had great conversations with a lot of our European friends at the very senior levels between, you know, the president and heads of state, between me and officials in European governments, but also with trade representatives and also the very nitty-gritty technical details of a trade agreement. So these conversations are ongoing. But I'll throw a few general principles out there. I think the first is that, again, America wants its exporters and by implication its workers to be treated much more fairly. We want American markets, in the same way that American markets have been open to a lot of European goods, we'd like a lot of European markets to be open to American goods. Now, there's an agriculture component to that. There's a value-added manufacturing component to that. We think that we have, in both the software but also the more harder technology side, we have some great defense technology firms where, on the one hand, we have our European friends saying we want to actually build up our defense, we want to do more burden sharing, but on the other hand, it seems like some of our European friends are less open for business if the people selling software and hardware are American firms. Well, we think that's inconsistent. We think that we have some of the best military hardware and software in the world, and we think part of being good allies is, yes, we obviously want the Europeans to take a bigger role in the continental defense, but we also think that there are a lot of great American companies that they can work with. And so, again, this doesn't have to be a zero-sum dynamic. This can be a very synergistic relationship, but the fundamental principle is we think that most nations in the world have been way too hard on American exporters and American firms. We want to make the entire world a little bit more open to the products built by American workers. We're obviously biased. We think that they're the best in the world, and we think that we can have a much better trading relationship with a lot of our European friends if they just drop some of those both tariff but also non-tariff trade barriers. There are regulatory barriers. There are sometimes you have an official at the Ministry of Defense completely disconnected, as far as we can tell, from an actual law or regulation who will just say, we're not buying American products.
Right.
Sometimes you have officials in Europe who will say, well, we're going to penalize American technology firms in a way that we would never penalize European technology firms. We just want a little bit more fairness, or to use the president's favorite word, reciprocity. And again, with Europe, we think that's a very, very easy conversation to have. We hope our European friends agree.
Great. I get signs from my friend here that we're quickly running out of time.
Well, I'm having fun. Okay. And we can take a few more questions.
Okay, great, wonderful.
My team over there is very nervous. You guys can't see them behind, but
we'll be brief.
Please.
So thank you very much. We've heard that there is, in coming days or next 2 weeks, a presidential trip to the Middle East coming up.
Sure.
Among the many unresolved issues of that region is the issue of Iran and their nuclear ambition, et cetera, et cetera. Could you talk a little bit about the region? I mean, there's so many unresolved issues, the Gaza issue, but also Tehran. What would your expectation be? What would the goal be? Would you go for zero enrichment by Iran? Some people have suggested that. Or are we looking at a replay of the earlier, agreement that was reached 10 years ago?
Yeah. So there are a couple issues with the earlier agreement. The JCPOA,
right,
as it's called here in the United States, and I assume in Europe. But here the two big issues with that agreement are, number one, the enforcement or the inspections regime was incredibly weak. And I don't think that it actually served the function of preventing the Iranians from getting on the pathway to a nuclear weapon. That's one thing that must be different. And then second, yes, we believe that there were some elements of their nuclear program that were preserved under JCPOA that, yes, they weren't nuclear weapons. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, but allowed Iran to sort of stay on this glide path towards a nuclear weapon if they flip the switch and press go. And we have to think about this not just in terms of Iran, which, again, the president has said this. We think that there is a deal here that would reintegrate Iran into the global economy, that would be really good for the Iranian people, but would result in the complete cessation of any chance that they could get a nuclear weapon. And that's what we're negotiating towards. And as the president has said, that's option A. And option B, if option A is very good for the Iranian people and even some of the folks, the leadership in Iran, option B is very bad. It's very bad for everybody, and it's not what we want, but it's better than option C, which is Iran getting a nuclear weapon. That is what is completely off the table for the American administration, no ifs, ands, or buts. Now, there are a couple of other things that are worth thinking about, because this is not just about Iran. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, which country then next gets a nuclear weapon? And then when that country gets a nuclear weapon, which country after that? We really care not just about Iran, but about nuclear proliferation. And the president said this in an interview a few weeks ago. It's one of these things that in the maelstrom of the media, the signal and the noise, this was very much signal, but it got lost in the noise. The president hates nuclear proliferation. I hate nuclear proliferation. And I think that the president would be very open to sitting down with the Russians and the Chinese and saying, look, let's get this thing in a much better place. Let's reduce the number of nuclear weapons that are in the world writ large. That's obviously not a conversation for tomorrow. That's a conversation, God willing, for a few years from now. But there is no way you get to that conversation if you allow multiple regimes all over the world to basically enter this sprint for a nuclear weapon. And we really think that if the Iran domino falls, you're going to see nuclear proliferation all over the Middle East. That's very bad for us. It's very bad for our friends. And it's something that we don't think can happen. So without prejudging the negotiations, I will say so far so good. We've been very happy by how the Iranians have responded to some of the points that we've made. We've been very happy that some of the intermediaries and some of the folks who are in the room, the role that they've played, the Omanis in particular, have played a very positive role, and we're very grateful to that. So far, we're on the right pathway, but this is going to end somewhere. And it will end either in Iran eliminating their nuclear program, their nuclear weapons program. They can have civil nuclear power. Okay, we don't mind that, but let me ask this basic question. Which regime in the world has civil nuclear power and enrichment without having a nuclear weapon? And the answer is no one. No one right now has a civil nuclear program with their entire enrichment infrastructure that can enrich to the 90+% needed to get to fissile material and a nuclear weapon. So our proposition is very simple. Yes, we don't care if people want nuclear power. We're fine with that. But you can't have the kind of enrichment program that allows you to get to a nuclear weapon, and that's where we draw the line.
Great. I think most of us would totally agree with that. And especially, I think, speaking on behalf of a non-nuclear country, with the goal of maintaining the nuclear non-proliferation regime.
Yes.
That's very important. That allows me to turn to my next or last question on NATO, because most people don't understand that the fact that we've had NATO under U.S. leadership for the last 70 years, that has been an essential instrument of international non-proliferation. Yes. If we had not had the U.S. nuclear presence in Europe, I would be prepared to give you at least 2, 3, 4, 5 countries in Europe that would have gone nuclear if they had not had this reassurance. Sure. So NATO has played a big role in nuclear non-proliferation. In 6 weeks' time, we have a NATO summit coming up. And again, there are many, many issues. One will be the continuing issue of defense spending. As we mentioned earlier in our discussion, Europeans are doing more, but we've also listened to demands coming out of the administration that are even more ambitious. So could you talk a little bit about your level of expectation? What would be your desired outcome of that NATO summit in terms of defense spending, in terms of how much Europe will need to do on its own in order to relieve the United States more in Europe?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of different components to this. So first of all, what the president has said is he'd like to see 5% spending on defense in NATO. And he thinks that that is consistent with what our European friends are telling us about how much they fear some of the threats in the world. And, given, unfortunately, that a lot of European militaries have not kept pace over the past few decades, there's a bit of catching up to do. And so that is the goal that the president has set. Obviously, the European countries are going to make their own determinations, but that's what we think is a reasonable goal. But it's really not just about the spend itself. It's also how the money is spent. And it's, again, there's this fear that we have when we look at some of our European friends, and I made this point at the first Munich Security Conference I ever went to, that when I looked at Germany 10, 15, 20 years ago, one of the things that the Germans were very good about is that they had kept the industrial strength of their economy consistent with the first world standard of living. But now what we see in Europe is a lot of our European friends are deindustrializing at the very moment where we're all seeing the hard power underpinning, or the economic underpinning of real hard power requires very strong and powerful industry. And so it's not just spending money, as important as that is, it's making sure that the same economic engine that powered first world living standards is actually geared towards producing, God forbid, weapons of war if those weapons of war are ever necessary. And so I think there's both an economic component to this that's completely divorced from the spending levels, and then of course there's the spending levels too. But we really want and we really care about Europe being self-sufficient. I gave an interview a couple of weeks ago where I actually tried to make the point that yes, we're going to have disagreements with Europe, and Europe will have disagreements with us. Sometimes, I would hearken back to 2003 United States policy in the Middle East. I frankly wish we had listened to our European friends. But I think this is an area where we're fundamentally right, and I think it's gratifying to see so many of our European friends recognize that and recognize that Europe does really have to play a bigger role in continental defense. I think we're all aligned on it. It's just a question of getting there, and most importantly, getting there quickly.
There is a glimmer of hope in our country, in Germany. As I'm sure you've seen, we've eliminated the so-called debt brake. Yes. When it comes to defense spending. So there is now the opportunity for the incoming new government in Germany to spend significantly more. In other words, I think we're we're in good shape in terms of responding to what you have just said. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of this wonderful discussion. I'm really grateful to you that you allowed this to be a Q&A session.
Sure.
We could continue this, I'm sure, for the rest of the morning, but I know you have other things coming up. May I simply conclude by saying that we hope very much, my team and I, that you will be willing and prepared to continue this young tradition that the United States at major Munich Security Conference events will be represented at your level. You are not the first Vice President of the United States who has come to the Munich Security Conference, but we are extremely grateful that you came in your new position. Please come again to Munich next year. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you. So if I may just say a few things in conclusion. First of all, I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate the invitation back. I wasn't sure after February whether I'd get the invitation back, but it's good to know that it's still there.
Well, we thought about it.
Second of all, since you brought up Germany, I wanted to, of course, from the President, issue our congratulations to Chancellor Merz. And I know that we'll have a conversation with him in the next couple of days, but we're looking forward to it. And the final point that I'd make is not to rehash what's in that document, but one of the things that I said in that speech that didn't get as much airplay, but I thought was just as important, is that everything that I said there applied as much to the previous American administration as it did any government in Europe. Oh. And I think that this, I mean this from the heart and as a friend, that there is a trade-off between policing the bounds of democratic speech and debate and losing the trust of our people. Every single country, and we're all going to...
This is beginning to come to an end, so we want to make sure that we go back to our coverage in Santa Ana, California. KABC saying now that one student was killed, 2 others were injured in a stabbing Wednesday afternoon at Santa Ana High School. As I said, this is from ABC 7 in LA. The incident happening on campus at the end of the school day. So there's a pretty large cordoned off area that police have, as you can see from this aerial shot. The police tape around kind of a coin and laundry mat there. A number of other businesses and buildings as well as they continue their investigation. But police say 3 boys were stabbed. One of them did die after he was rushed to the hospital, while the other 2 are in stable condition tonight. Police say that they're looking for 2 different suspects, and they are high school students, but it's unclear if they attend Santa Ana High School, and it's still unclear what led to this shooting. But however, the school district did say the incident may have been gang-related. So this investigation still ongoing. And this is what WCNC Plus is great for, capturing news like this that's happening in the moment. No matter where it is in the United States, we're able to bring it to you. So this has been our show from 7 to 9 tonight. We'll see you again at 11 as we look ahead towards tomorrow.